Her voice cut through the low murmur of the cafe like a string pulled tight. Do you really mean that? I hadn't planned to say anything at all. Yet there I was, my palms still on the edge of the table, the faint tremor of her question running up my wrists. She sat opposite me, half turned toward the window, dark hair coiled loosely at the nape of her neck. 40-something, I guessed, though there was nothing dated about the way she carried herself. It was the quiet poise of someone who had lived enough to know how words can bruise. I answered without looking away. Every word comes from my heart. She blinked, slow, as if tasting the reply. Her fingers traced the rim of her cup, but didn't lift it. The coffee inside had cooled. A thin circle of cream clung to the porcelain. Outside, a drizzle blurred the streetlights into gold streaks. Inside, time felt like it had stopped between the two of us. She had that calm gravity that made me speak less and watch more. The way her eyes held mine wasn't a challenge, but a weight. She shifted slightly, and her knee brushed mine under the table. An accident, or maybe not. She didn't move it away. You're very sure of yourself, she said finally, but the words carried no edge. She kept staring at the window while speaking to me, as if the view could shield her. I wasn't sure of anything. My hands curled against each other under the table. I don't say things I don't mean, I murmured. She turned then, fully. Up close her perfume was faint, like citrus after rain. It filled the space between us in a way no one else in the cafe seemed to notice. Her hand drifted across the table, not touching mine, but close enough for the warmth to register. I could almost feel the pulse in her thumb. You're young, she said. A pause. And you watch people. I tried to smile, but it came out uneven. You make it hard not to. That made her laugh. Short, low, a sound caught in her throat. She lowered her eyes, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Her lips pressed together as though she'd said too much without speaking. I watched the steam fade from our cups. The silence stretched, it wasn't empty. My breath slowed to match hers. I noticed the small things, how she worried the edge of her napkin between her fingers, how her shoulders stayed squared but her ankles shifted, restless, beneath the chair. Outside, a bus hissed at the curb. She glanced at it, but didn't stand. What are you looking for? She asked softly. The question felt heavier than it should. I looked down at our hands, still not touching, still close. I almost reached out but stopped, nails digging lightly into my palm. I'm not sure, I said, but I think it's right here. Her breath caught, the smallest sound. She studied me for a moment, eyes searching. Then she leaned back, crossing her arms as though to gather herself. The drizzle outside turned to rain. Inside, the hum of the cafe dimmed. We sat facing each other, 2 cups cooling, the distance between our fingers no more than a whisper. She tilted her head, the corners of her mouth lifting, but only a little. Careful, she murmured. Words can mean too much. I swallowed. Maybe they're supposed to. She didn't answer, but her hand stayed where it was, warm and waiting. We left the cafe together without planning to. The rain had turned fine and misty, clinging to our coats. She held her umbrella low, so close that the edge brushed my temple. I could smell her shampoo, something clean and faintly herbal. Every step was measured. Our shoulders touched once, then again, but neither of us shifted away. She spoke first, almost absently. You remind me of someone I used to know. I glanced sideways. Good memories? She hesitated, her thumb tightening on the umbrella handle. Not all of them. The street was nearly empty. Shop fronts glimmered behind the water, neon bending in the puddles. Her voice felt softer here, as if the rain muted it for us alone. I don't usually meet like this, she said. Like what? With someone your age. She gave a brittle smile. It's never simple. I shoved my hands in my pockets, fighting the urge to reach for her elbow, to guide her around a puddle. It's not simple for me either, I admitted, the words falling out before I could censor them. Her eyes flicked toward me, sharp and searching. She stopped walking for a moment under the awning of a closed bookstore. Drops pattered on the umbrella between us. She seemed to weigh something. I've been divorced 8 years, she said finally, looking at the wet sidewalk instead of me. One long relationship since then. It ended badly. The air between us shifted. She tightened the belt of her coat, fingers trembling just enough for me to notice. I told her, I've only had one real relationship. We were too young to know what we wanted. It sounded boyish, but it was the truth. She nodded without looking up. Then you know how easy it is to hurt someone without meaning to. I did. And yet here I was, walking next to her, drawn in a way that felt less like a decision and more like gravity. A bus roared past, splashing water onto the curb. She reached for my sleeve, pulling me closer under the umbrella. Her hand lingered a second longer than necessary, fingers warm through the fabric. "You're wet," she said. Her voice dipped low. "I don't mind," I murmured. For a moment we stood pressed shoulder to shoulder under the tiny circle of fabric, the rest of the city disappearing in the downpour. I could feel the quick rise and fall of her breath against my arm. She exhaled near my neck, and the warmth of it made me swallow hard. She stepped back then, as if remembering something, the umbrella tilting away. Her eyes searched mine, warning, curiosity, a trace of fear. "This isn't wise," she whispered. "No," I said quietly. "But it feels." She cut me off with a small shake of her head, but she didn't let go of my sleeve. Her fingers stayed there, just enough. Pressure to make my pulse jump. The rain blurred everything beyond us. Under the dim light of the awning, we stood close. "I don't know how to," she started, then stopped. I swallowed. "Me neither." Her pulse jumped at her wrist. The light from the window shifted, cutting across her face, softening her expression. She leaned a fraction closer, enough for the edge of her coat to brush my stomach. "People would," she began, but trailed off. I heard my own voice low. "Let them." Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then away. The space between us collapsed, one breath, maybe two. Then she straightened, pulling the book back to her chest as if it could shield her. Still, she didn't step aside. Our shoulders stayed pressed in the narrow aisle. She looked at me once more, no words now, only that unspoken pull that neither of us could name. Night had fallen by the time we left the library. We didn't plan where to go, we just walked until the streets emptied. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled like wet stone. A narrow alley led to a courtyard lit by a single flickering lamp. She stopped there, turning toward me, coat open, scarf loosened. "You've been quiet," she said. Her voice was soft but steady, like someone bracing for something. I tried to answer, but my throat tightened. Instead, I reached out without thinking and brushed a strand of damp hair from her face. My fingers barely touched her temple. She didn't move away. Her eyes closed for a second, lashes trembling. "You shouldn't do that," she whispered. "Why not?" "You know why." She opened her eyes again, looking right at me. In the yellow light, they seemed almost dark enough to drown in. "You're too young." "I'm too." She cut herself off. I stepped closer until our coats brushed. "Tell me to stop, and I will." She didn't. Her hands were clenched inside her pockets. "I've tried to stay away," she said, a little rough now, like the words scraped her throat. "But every time I see you, it's—" I waited, heart hammering. "It's what?" Her breath came faster. "It's a mistake I want to make." The courtyard was silent except for a dripping gutter. She swayed slightly toward me, then back, as if fighting some invisible pull. My hands hovered at her waist but didn't touch. I could feel the heat of her body through the inches between us. "You don't know what people would say?" she murmured. "I don't care what they'd say," I replied. My voice sounded lower than I'd meant, closer to a plea. "I care about you." Her laugh broke halfway out, fragile and unbelieving. "You shouldn't." But she leaned against the wall behind her, and when I moved nearer she didn't shift. Our shadows merged on the brick. I placed my palm beside her head, not trapping her, just there. She tilted her face up toward mine. Her scent, citrus and rain, rose like a memory. I bent until my lips hovered near her ear. "Then tell me to go," I whispered. She didn't. Her hands finally left her pockets and rested lightly on my chest, fingertips trembling through my shirt. "You make it hard," she said. The space between us disappeared down to a breath, a heartbeat. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then back. My thumb brushed the edge of her jaw. She shuddered once, but not from cold. We were right there, suspended, a second from something we couldn't undo, when a voice echoed from the courtyard entrance, calling her name. She froze. I felt her fingers dig into my shirt. The lamp flickered overhead. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no sound came. She didn't come back right away after the voice called her name. I stood in the courtyard, hands at my sides, pulse still hammering. The air had cooled. Condensation clung to the bricks. When she finally appeared again at the archway, her face was pale, almost startled. "We need to talk," she said. The words landed heavier than they should. She kept her coat closed tight now, like armor. I followed her to a bench at the far end of the courtyard, away from the street. She didn't sit. She hovered at the edge, one hand gripping the iron railing. Her knuckles were white. I haven't been honest, she said quietly. About who saw us just now. I frowned. Who was it? She glanced over her shoulder. My ex. He works nearby. He knows me. And she swallowed. He knows you too. The ground tilted a little. Knows me how? I didn't tell you, she murmured. I teach a seminar at the college. He's on the board. He's been watching since he heard about you. She let out a brittle laugh. He'll think the worst. I stepped closer, but she drew back, almost flinching. So all this time. I was trying to keep it quiet, she said. I thought we had room. We don't. Her confession cracked something open. I could see the tremor in her hands as she wrapped her arms around herself. A gust of wind caught her hair. She shoved it back, not neatly this time, but with shaking fingers. She was still beautiful, but no longer untouchable, fragile in a way that made my chest ache. You should have told me, I said. My voice was low, but it carried. I walked into this blind. I know. She closed her eyes. I thought I could stop before it mattered. I stepped nearer until we were almost chest to chest. Too late, I said. She opened her eyes then, and whatever she saw in my face made her sway forward, only to catch herself on the railing. Our coats brushed. Her breath hitched audibly. For a moment she pressed her forehead against my shoulder, like someone seeking shelter. Then she pushed back again, shaking her head. This is dangerous, she whispered. For both of us. I don't care, I whispered back. Her hands rose halfway, as if to touch my face, then fell. You think it's only about you and me? She said. It's not. I don't care, I said again, softer this time, stepping closer so she had to lean against the railing. My fingers brushed hers on the cold iron, and she didn't move them away. She exhaled sharply, trembling. If we do this, she began. Then we do it. I finished. For a heartbeat she stared at me, eyes wide, every muscle taut. Then, slowly, she slid her fingers between mine, locking them. A small, deliberate choice. Neither of us spoke. The decision had already been made. It was in the way our hands stayed clasped, in the space we no longer tried to keep. The apartment was quiet except for the rain against the windows. She'd texted only an address. No words, just a pin on a map. I almost didn't go, but now I was standing in her doorway, coat dripping, heart loud in my ears. She opened the door wider without speaking. The room behind her glowed with the amber light of a single lamp. No music, no television, just the smell of tea and something faintly floral. She closed the door and leaned against it for a moment, as if bracing herself. You came, she whispered. I almost didn't send it. She walked past me toward the kitchen, but stopped halfway, turning back. The distance between us was no more than an arm's length. We can still stop, she said, though her voice caught on the word stop. I don't want to stop, I said. She moved closer, slow. Her coat slid off her shoulders. She let it fall to a chair. You don't understand what it will cost, she murmured. I do, I said, softer now, and I'm still here. Her eyes closed briefly. When she opened them, something in her had shifted, no more hiding. She stepped into my space until her forehead nearly touched mine. The smell of rain still clung to her hair. My hands rose, hesitated, then cupped her face lightly, thumbs tracing the damp at her temples. She trembled once under my palms, but didn't pull away. This isn't a game, she breathed. I know. Her hands found my wrists, holding them there. We stood like that, barely moving, breaths tangling. The lamp cast our shadows against the wall, one shape leaning into another. She tilted her head, eyes flicking to my mouth and back again. My heart felt like it would split my ribs. Tell me what you want, she said. You, I whispered. The word hung there, unsteady but true. She made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob, then pressed her forehead to mine. I've been afraid of this since the first day, she said. I slid one hand down to her shoulder, fingers grazing the edge of her sleeve. She leaned into the touch, eyes closing. For a long moment we simply breathed each other's air, all the reasons not to written on the silence around us. Then she opened her eyes. If we cross this line, she whispered, there's no going back. I searched her face, saw not just want but everything she'd been trying to protect. Her job, her reputation, the walls she'd built. I don't want to go back, I said. Her fingers tightened on my wrists. She rose slightly onto her toes, bringing her lips a breath from mine. Then stop hesitating, she murmured. We stayed there, suspended, one heartbeat, two, knowing exactly what we were choosing. In that breath before the inevitable, the fear and the longing became the same thing. And for the first time, we both stopped hiding. Morning light spilled through her curtains, soft and golden, making the room feel less like a secret and more like a place that could hold us. She sat on the edge of the sofa, hair damp from the shower, a mug between her hands. I sat on the floor by her feet, back against the couch, trying to find the words. Neither of us spoke for a while. Only the sound of the kettle cooling in the kitchen and the distant city traffic. She reached down and smoothed a thumb across the back of my hand where it rested on my knee. It was such a small touch, but it felt like the first honest one. I didn't sleep much, she said finally. Kept thinking about everything. So did I admitted. All the reasons this shouldn't happen. Her hand stilled on mine. And I kept coming back here, I said. To you. She set her mug on the table, then folded both her hands over mine, fingers cool but steady. I'm still scared, she whispered. I turned and looked up at her. Me too. But I'm not walking away. Her eyes searched mine. The guardedness that had lived there for weeks was softer now. She slid off the sofa and sat beside me on the carpet, knees touching. It's not going to be easy, she said. I know, I said. I don't need easy. For a long moment we just sat, shoulder to shoulder, our hands intertwined. The warmth of her palm against mine grounded everything. No more hiding, no pretending it wasn't real. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I felt the weight of it, the smell of her hair, the steady rhythm of her breathing. I keep thinking about the first time we met, she murmured. How you wouldn't stop watching me. And how you pretended not to notice, I said, smiling. Her laugh was quiet, real. She shifted, lifting her head to look at me. Her palm rose to my cheek, thumb grazing the corner of my mouth. If we're going to do this, she said, then let's be honest. No more running. No more running, I repeated. She leaned in then, not a rush but a slow, sure movement, and pressed her forehead to mine. We stayed like that, eyes closed, our hands still locked, our breathing synced. It wasn't a dramatic gesture. It was something steadier, like a promise built out of two tired people who'd finally stopped pretending. I want to see where this goes, she whispered. Together, I said. Together, she echoed. The sun shifted again, lighting the room. We sat quietly in it, still touching, finally unafraid. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?